Welcome back to Grief Inspired. My name is Catherine McNulty, and I'm so glad that you're here. They call me the Grief Lady because I deal with all things related to grief. And today's topic is a bit heavy, as are a lot of things related to grief. But today is, what do you do when a friend loses a child? How do you support that friend? What do you do? And I recognize that this is a difficult conversation because no one likes to think about losing a child. And the reality is that it happens. And we're going to give you some tips. I want to give you some tips, some things that you can do. It's really to keep the conversation going. If there's questions that you have, please leave them below. If there's something that you've done that you thought was really helpful that I didn't include, that isn't included in this video, please let me know because really you're benefiting everyone by sharing. So this video came about because my sister-in-law sent me a text message, and she explained to me that she had a friend and her friend's son had died. And she said, I bought a card. What do I write in this card? She had no idea what to write, what to do. So I'm really glad that she reached out to me, and I chose to call her as opposed to just respond to her text message because I think grief conversations warrant more than just a text message. So she said that this person that had died was a young boy who was 13, who had been her student. So she had a close relationship with the boy, and she herself was devastated and was having her own grief response. But in this moment, she was really focused on what does she put in the card? How does she support this boy's mother? She said, what do I do? And so we talked about it. And my advice to her was, well, you know this boy and you have children of your own. Take a moment to tap into what that must feel like. What would you be feeling if you were just told that your son or your daughter had passed away? And I understand that it's uncomfortable to think about, and no one wants to believe that that can happen, but it does happen. And so tapping into that will put you in a situation to really be empathetic, to be compassionate. And my advice to her was, well, whatever words come up when you think of that, those are the words that you put in the card, right? I can't even imagine. You must be so devastated. This must be so hard on you. She also because she had a relationship with the boy, and he had been in her class for 5 years, she had a lot of stories. I said, tell me about this boy. And she went on and she spent 10 or 15 minutes just sharing about the boy. And I said, those are the things that you want to include in the card. Share a short story. Tell those who are suffering what the person meant to you. What were your interactions like? What do you remember? How will you remember this person moving forward? Those are the things that you want to include in the card. And so she said she was going to do that. And then I continued the conversation, and I said, well, she said, well, should I send flowers? The funeral is next week. And I said, well, are you going to the funeral? And she said, absolutely. Going to funerals is really important. And the person that is grieving may not remember that you were at the funeral, but they will know. And they'll see it on a lot of times there's a funeral list that you can sign. You can leave a card at the funeral so that they remember that you were there. But going to the funeral means a lot. Even if you didn't know the person that died, just as a support to the person who's grieving. So go to the funeral if you can at all. If you want to send flowers, go ahead and send flowers. I personally don't like flowers. I encourage the sending of plants because the problem with cut flowers and grief is that those flowers ultimately die. And I remember sitting around my house full of white lilies, which after my son died, white lilies, I don't like them anymore. But what happened was they all started to die, and then they were all just falling all over the floor. And it was really just even more depressing. So that's why I'm an advocate for plants. And then I said, well, was she married? Did she, was her husband there? And she said, yes. And I said, well, you could send a card to the husband as well. Or if you don't send a separate card for him, please include him in the card. Oftentimes, when a child dies, we think about the mother, which makes complete sense. But fathers are parents too. Fathers go through the loss just like the mother. Well, not just like the mother, but in addition to the mother, they have their own grief process. It oftentimes is not quite as visible as a mother's grief would be, but that doesn't mean that they're not grieving to the same extent. If there are other children involved, acknowledge the children. Send something special for the child to show that you care. There's tons of books that are available that talk about loss, that talk about death. It's something that will really offer support to the sibling, and maybe send a small gift. It doesn't have to be anything big, but a gift that just shows that you care. And if you can think of something that reminds you of their brother, then that would be a really good idea for a gift. So my advice to you in all of this is put yourself in their shoes. Think about what they must be going through. Remember who else might be affected. Don't discount that there are other people around. Don't just include the mother. Think of other people. And then lastly, what I want to say is consider doing more than one thing. So often we think that if we send a card or go to a funeral, that we've done enough. In some ways, that is enough. But you can do so much more. And if you really want to show compassion and show that you care, check in on a regular basis. Jot down dates that will be important to the person. So a week after the loss, a month after the loss, 3 months, 6 months, and particularly a year, those are all really critical dates that people will be remembering. And on those days, their loss will likely be heightened, that sense of loss for whatever reason. And so for you being able to send a text message or send a card or give a phone call on those days and just say, hey, I'm thinking about you because I know today is an anniversary and I just want you to know that I care. I cannot express to you the magnitude of how helpful that can be to someone who's grieving. Grief lasts a whole lot longer than you will remember that someone is grieving. And it's not something that they will forget anytime in the near future. So keep that in mind, that it's not a one and done. Grief lasts a really long time. It's different for everyone, but at a minimum, grief lasts a year, and oftentimes it's much more than that. And so, I mean, those are the things that are really important. Check in frequently, do what you can to let them know that you're there, that you care, offer your support. If you're in a position to be really brave and to listen, invite them for coffee. Ask them if you can come over. And it's not about saying the right words or doing the right things. It's really about showing up and sitting in the discomfort and just being with the person so that they don't have to grieve alone. The reason why I do all these videos and the reason why I do everything relating to Grief Inspired is because no one should have to grieve alone. And the reason why people grieve alone is because we're all uncomfortable about it. We don't know what to do. We don't know how to support other people. We don't know how to support ourselves when it happens to us. And those are all the things that Grief Inspired really aims to change. So we're creating a change here. We're creating a shift. We're leaning in to the discomfort and showing that we care. And by doing that, we can make a monumental difference in the lives of other people. So I hope that helps you. Please leave me a comment below if it does. If there's other questions that you have or other topics that are really weighing on your heart, please let me know below and I will create a video just for you, because the conversation has to happen and I want to help facilitate that. Thanks so much. Again, from my heart to yours, we got to do this together, and no one should grieve alone. Thanks so much.